Number 1. Barry Grunow, the teacher who trusted too much. A 13-year-old boy walks into his English class, smiles at his teacher, hands him a greeting card, and then shoots him in the face. One bullet, one life gone, over a water balloon. Barry Grunow was an English teacher at Lake Worth Middle School in Florida. The kind of teacher struggling kids needed, patient, caring, always giving second chances. One of those students was Nathaniel Brazel, a 13-year-old honor roll student who looked up to him like a father. May 26, 2000. Last day of school before summer. That morning, Nathaniel threw a water balloon in class. A harmless prank. But he was suspended, sent home, humiliated in front of everyone. For Nathaniel, it wasn't just punishment, it was rage. He didn't cry. He didn't argue. He went to his stepfather's house, grabbed a .25 caliber semi-automatic pistol, and walked back to school. The gun hidden in his backpack. Nathaniel entered room 8. Mr. Grunow was at his desk. The boy approached, smiled, pulled out a Hallmark greeting card and handed it over, a bizarre, chilling gesture. Mr. Grunow took the card, looked up. That's when Nathaniel pulled the trigger. One shot, point blank, direct hit to the face. Barry Grunow collapsed instantly. Blood, screams, chaos. Students scrambled for exits. Teachers rushed in. But it was over. A man who spent his career believing in kids was killed by one. Nathaniel was arrested within minutes. No emotion, just a blank stare. In court, he said 5 words that still haunt people. I didn't mean to kill him. He was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 28 years in prison. He's still serving that sentence today. Barry Grunow left behind a wife, 2 young children, and hundreds of students who lost the one teacher who truly believed in them. How does a greeting card and a gunshot happen in the same breath? How does love turn into murder in the mind of a child? Nobody has an answer. Number 2. Shannon Wright, the teacher who became a human shield. 2 boys, ages 11 and 13. A fake fire alarm, a van full of stolen guns, and a teacher who used her final breath to save a student. Shannon Wright was a 32-year-old 6th-grade teacher at Westside Middle School in Jonesboro, Arkansas. Passionate, energetic, loved by her students. A wife, a mother to a young son. March 24, 1998. A normal Tuesday afternoon. Until the fire alarm went off. Students and teachers filed outside in orderly lines. No one panicked. It was routine. But this wasn't a drill. It was a trap. Hidden in the woods were 13-year-old Mitchell Johnson and 11-year-old Andrew Golden. Between them, 13 firearms, all stolen. They'd planned this for days, written a list, chosen their targets. As students stood outside, exposed and unprotected, the boys opened fire. Gunfire erupted. Screams. Chaos. Shannon saw one of her students, Emma Pittman, frozen in terror. Without hesitation, Shannon threw herself over the girl, using her own body as a shield. That's when the bullet hit. It tore through Shannon's back. She collapsed on top of Emma, still holding her. The shooting lasted 5 minutes. When it was over, 5 people were dead, 4 students and Shannon Wright. 10 others were wounded. Shannon died at the hospital, but Emma Pittman survived, because a teacher chose to be a shield instead of running. Johnson and Golden were arrested, tried as juveniles, and sentenced to confinement until age 21. That's it. Johnson was later arrested for other crimes. Golden died in a car crash in 2019. Shannon's husband and young son were left without her. Her students were traumatized. And America was left asking, how do children become killers? Shannon Wright didn't get to see her son grow up. But in her final moments, she taught the most important lesson of all, sacrifice. Emma Pittman is alive today because of it. Number 3. William Dave Sanders, the teacher who bled out waiting for help. He saved over 100 students. Then he was shot twice and left to bleed for 3 hours while police stood outside. His last words were written in his own blood. Dave Sanders was a business teacher and girls basketball coach at Columbine High School in Colorado. A legend, the guy students called when they needed help. He'd been there 25 years. April 20th, 1999. 11:19 a.m. Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold walked into the cafeteria wearing black trench coats, carrying bombs and guns. They weren't there to make a statement. They were there to kill. Dave heard the gunfire. While others froze or fled, Dave ran toward the danger. He sprinted through hallways, banging on doors, screaming, "Get down! Get inside. There's a shooter. He saved over 100 students in those first minutes. Then he turned to warn more kids. That's when Eric Harris saw him. 2 shots. Both hit. One bullet tore through Dave's neck. Another ripped into his torso. He collapsed, bleeding. 2 students dragged him into Science Room 3. They tried to stop the bleeding with shirts. One held his hand. Another whispered, "Help is coming." But help wasn't coming. Outside, police formed a perimeter. Protocol said wait. Don't go in blind. So they waited. And Dave Sanders bled. For 3 hours, he lay dying. Students held signs in windows. One bleeding to death. Police saw them. Did nothing. Dave tried to speak but couldn't. So he used his blood to write a final message on the floor. Then his heart stopped. 2:42 p.m. gone. Harris and Klebold killed 13 people that day before shooting themselves. Dave was one of them. But he was also the reason over 100 made it home. Dave Sanders didn't just teach lessons. He became one. Number 4. Colleen Ritzer, the teacher killed in her own bathroom. She stayed after school to help a struggling student. He followed her into the bathroom, raped her, slit her throat, and dumped her body in a recycling bin. He was 14 years old. Colleen Ritzer was 24. A brand new math teacher at Danvers High School in Massachusetts. Full of energy, optimism, passion. She wore colorful outfits, made math fun. Her students loved her. One of those students was Philip Chisholm, a quiet 14-year-old who had just moved from Tennessee. Soccer player. Good student. Seemingly normal. October 22nd, 2013. After school, Colleen stayed late, like she always did, to help students. Philip stayed too. Lingered in her classroom. Asked questions. But he wasn't there to learn. At some point, Colleen went to the second-floor bathroom. Philip followed her. Inside, he attacked. Punched her. Strangled her. Raped her. Then he pulled out a box cutter and slit her throat. Blood pooled on the tile floor. Philip left. Calm. Methodical. He grabbed a recycling bin, went back, stuffed Colleen's body inside, and wheeled it out of the school. He dumped her in the woods behind the building. Then he went to see a movie. Bought a ticket. Sat down like nothing had happened. When Colleen didn't come home, police reviewed security footage. They saw Philip leaving with the recycling bin. Found blood in the bathroom. Hours later, they found Colleen's body in the woods. Brutalized. Discarded. Philip was found walking along a highway, still carrying the box cutter and Colleen's credit cards. He confessed immediately. No remorse. At trial, the defense argued insanity. Prosecutors showed how calculated it was. The jury agreed. Guilty. Philip Chisholm was sentenced to life in prison with parole eligibility after 40 years. Colleen stayed late to help. And it cost her everything. Number 5. Michael Lansbury, the Marine who faced a gun with open arms. He was a decorated Marine who survived 2 wars. Then a 12-year-old student shot him in the chest while he was trying to talk him down. His last act wasn't to run, it was to protect. Michael Lansbury was 45 years old, a middle school math teacher at Sparks Middle School in Nevada. But before teaching, he was a United States Marine, a veteran who'd served in Afghanistan and survived combat. October 21st, 2013. 7:16 a.m. students were arriving for school. A normal Monday morning, until a 12-year-old boy pulled a 9mm semi-automatic handgun out of his backpack. He didn't say a word. He just started shooting. Kids screamed and scattered. 2 students were hit, one in the shoulder, another in the abdomen. They collapsed, bleeding. The shooter kept walking, gun raised, looking for more targets. That's when Michael Lansbury stepped in. He didn't hide. He didn't run. He walked toward the boy. Calmly, hands raised. He started talking to him, trying to de-escalate, trying to reach a troubled kid before it was too late. Witnesses said Michael's hands were open. His voice was steady. He was asking the boy to put the gun down. The boy looked at him, raised the gun, and shot him in the chest. Michael Lansbury, a man who'd survived war zones and enemy fire, fell to the ground on a middle school playground. Killed by a child. The boy fired one more shot. Then he turned the gun on himself. Dead. The 2 injured students survived. Michael did not. At his funeral, thousands gathered. Veterans in uniform. Students sobbing. A flag-draped casket. A 21-gun salute. Michael Lansbury survived 2 wars. He came home. He chose to teach kids math. And when a 12-year-old brought a gun to school, he did what Marines do. He stood his ground. Number 6. Scott Beigel, the teacher who locked himself outside. He could have hidden. He could have survived. Instead, he held the door open so students could get inside. And that's when the shooter found him. Scott Beigel was 35 years old, a geography teacher and cross-country coach at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. Known for his dry humor, his dedication, and his summers spent as a camp counselor mentoring kids. February 14th, 2018. Valentine's Day. At 2:21 p.m., Nicholas Cruz, a 19-year-old former student, walked into the school carrying an AR-15 rifle. He pulled the fire alarm to create chaos, then started shooting. Scott Beigel was in his classroom, room 1214, when he heard the gunfire. He immediately knew what it was. He'd been through active shooter drills. Lock the door. Turn off the lights. Get everyone down. But when he looked into the hallway, he saw students running, panicking, desperately looking for safety. His door was open. He could have locked it immediately, saved himself and the students already inside. But he didn't. Scott held the door open, waved students in. Get in. Get in. Hurry. Kids sprinted toward him. He pulled them inside one by one. Time was running out. The shooter was getting closer. Scott was still holding the door when Nicholas Cruz turned the corner. He raised the rifle. Scott tried to close the door. Too late. A single shot. It hit Scott in the chest. He staggered backward into the classroom and collapsed. Students screamed. Some tried to help him. Others huddled in terror. Cruz killed 17 people that day. Scott was one of them. But every student who made it into room 1214 is alive because of one choice. He held the door open. He died a hero. And he died alone. Number 7. Aaron Faze, the coach who used his body as a shield. He wasn't a security guard. He wasn't trained for combat. He was just a football coach who loved his players. And when the bullets started flying, he threw himself in front of them. Aaron Faze was 37 years old, an assistant football coach and security monitor at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. To his players, he was a mentor, a father figure, the guy who showed up at 5 a.m. for practice and stayed late to give kids rides home. February 14th, 2018. Valentine's Day. 2:21 p.m. Nicholas Cruz walked into the school with an AR-15 rifle and opened fire. Hallways erupted in chaos. Aaron heard the shots. He was near the freshman building when it started. He didn't hesitate, didn't call for backup. He just ran toward the gunfire. His job title was security monitor, basically a hall monitor with a radio. He had no weapon, no body armor, no training for active shooters, just his instincts and his love for those kids. As Aaron ran through the hallways, he saw students fleeing in terror. Some were frozen, too scared to move. He started directing them. Go! Get out! Move! He physically pushed kids toward exits, shielding them with his large frame. Then he saw a group of students trapped in the open, directly in the shooter's path. Without thinking, Aaron threw himself in front of them. That's when the bullets hit. Multiple shots. Chest and abdomen. Aaron collapsed. The students he'd been covering scrambled to safety. Paramedics rushed him to the hospital, but the wounds were too severe. Aaron Faze died hours later. Cruz killed 17 people that day. Aaron was one of them. But the students he shielded? They survived. Every single one. Aaron Faze wasn't trained to be a hero. He just was one. Number 8. Christopher Hickson, the athletic director who ran into the storm. He was the athletic director. He could have locked his office door and waited it out. Instead, he grabbed his radio and ran straight toward the gunfire. He never came back. Christopher "Chris" Hickson was 49 years old, the athletic director at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. A U.S. Navy veteran who'd served in Operations Desert Storm and Iraqi Freedom. A wrestling coach. A father of 2. Chris wasn't just an administrator. He knew every athlete by name. Showed up to every game, every match, every practice. He was the guy who stayed late to unlock the gym for kids who needed a place to train. February 14th, 2018. Valentine's Day. 2:21 p.m. The fire alarm went off. Then the gunshots started. Nicholas Cruz, the 19-year-old former student with an AR-15, was moving through the freshman building, executing students and staff. Chaos. Screaming. Blood. Chris Hickson was in his office when he heard the shots. He grabbed his radio. tried to get information. No one knew where the shooter was. Most people would have barricaded the door, called 911, waited for SWAT. That's protocol. That's safe. But Chris Hickson was a Navy veteran, and veterans don't hide when people are dying. He left his office and ran toward the gunfire. He moved through the hallways, searching for the shooter, trying to stop him, trying to protect his students. Chris found the shooter on the first floor. Investigators believe he tried to stop Cruz physically, tried to tackle him, disarm him, end it. He didn't succeed. Multiple gunshots. Close range. Chris Hickson went down. The shooter moved on. When SWAT finally entered, they found him. Too late. Cruz killed 17 people that day. Chris was one of 3 staff members murdered. All 3 men who ran toward danger instead of away. Chris Hickson didn't survive. But because of him, others did. Number 9. Robert Brents, the teacher who failed a student and paid with his life. Eric Houston failed history class. So he came back with a rifle, held the school hostage for 8 hours, and executed his teacher in front of his students. Robert Brents was a history teacher at Lyndhurst High School in Olivehurst, California. He was tough but fair. High standards. He expected his students to work hard, and if they didn't, they failed. One of those students was Eric Houston. Eric was 17 when he took Mr. Brent's history class. He didn't do the work, didn't turn in assignments, failed the course. And when he failed, he blamed the teacher. Not himself. He blamed Robert Brents for ruining his life. Eric dropped out, struggled to find work, drifted, and the resentment festered. He convinced himself that everything wrong in his life traced back to one moment. The day Robert Brents gave him an F. May 1st, 1992. 3 years after failing, Eric Houston, now 20 years old, walked into Lyndhurst High School with a sawed-off shotgun and a .22 caliber rifle. Dressed in military fatigues, he walked straight to Robert Brent's classroom, kicked open the door, raised the shotgun, and blew his teacher's head off in front of the entire class. Students screamed. Blood splattered the walls. Eric didn't flinch. He turned the gun on the class. Everybody on the floor. We're not going anywhere. What followed was an 8-hour hostage standoff. Eric roamed the halls, gun in hand. He killed 3 students who tried to run, wounded 10 others. He wanted everyone to know why he did it. Finally, at 8:30 p.m., Eric surrendered. He was sentenced to death. He's been on California's death row for over 30 years. Robert Brents never made it past 46. All because a kid couldn't accept an F. Number 10. Lawrence Levine, the professor who tried to save his classroom. When the shooter entered his classroom, 67-year-old Larry Levine didn't hide. He tried to stop him. He blocked the door with his body, and he was shot 5 times. Lawrence Larry Levine was 67 years old, an assistant professor of English at Umpqua Community College in Roseburg, Oregon. Beloved for his kindness, his humor, and his deep love of literature. He was also a survivor. He battled cancer and won. October 1st, 2015. 10:38 a.m. Snyder Hall, room 15. Larry's English class was in session, about 30 students discussing writing assignments. Then Christopher Harper Mercer walked in. He was 26 years old. Not a student in that class. Not a student anymore. He'd dropped out, but he'd been planning this for weeks. He carried multiple guns, handguns, rifles, all legally purchased. He wore body armor, and he had a twisted manifesto about hating organized religion. He entered the classroom silently, pulled out a handgun, and started shooting. Chaos erupted. Students dove under desks, screamed. Larry Levine stood up, not to flee, to act. Witnesses say Larry moved toward the shooter. Some say he tried to block the door, to stop Harper Mercer from shooting more students. Others say he tried to reason with him. Harper Mercer raised his gun and shot Larry 5 times. The professor collapsed. Harper Mercer wasn't done. He ordered survivors to stand in the center of the room. Then he started asking, "Are you a Christian?" If they said yes, he shot them in the head. If they said no, he shot them in the legs. 9 people were killed that day. 8 students and Larry Levine. When police cornered Harper Mercer in a hallway, he turned the gun on himself. Dead. Larry was weeks away from retirement. He was supposed to be traveling with his wife. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He tried to save his students. And it cost him everything.